It's official. Five-star defensive end Rodney Dunham just announced that he is committing to Notre Dame, and this is a massive win for Marcus Freeman in the Irish. Dunham is the kind of elite, difference-making pass rusher that the Irish have been looking for years, and today they got their guy. We're breaking it all down right here on Locked On Irish.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into a special edition of Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. My name is Tyler Wojciak, and I'm the host. I'm a Notre Dame alum, and now I'm a producer at Fox Sports. And we are coming at you live on Thursday, April 10th, for a special afternoon edition of the program as we react to Rodney Dunham's commitment, which he just announced on 24/7 Sports that he is in fact committing to Marcus Freeman and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Even though it's the offseason, the news cycle never stops around Notre Dame football. So make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube or wherever you are listening to the podcast. Also wanted to mention that we are doing another mailbag tomorrow. So get those questions in. You can drop below in the YouTube comments, or you can send them my way on social media if you want to be featured on tomorrow's show. But this episode is presented by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And let's get into it right off the top. This is a massive win for Marcus Freeman and the Fighting Irish, Al Washington, and literally everyone who was involved in the recruitment of Rodney Dunham. Every commitment is exciting, don't get me wrong, but as we all know, not all commitments mean the same and end up mattering as much as some others. This is not just another good pickup for Notre Dame. This is the type of game-changing talent on the defensive line that Notre Dame has been missing for a long time. So today, we're going to break down everything you need to know about Dunham, who he is, why he's a perfect fit for the Notre Dame defense, the class impact, how the Irish managed to beat out some SEC heavyweights for his commitment. Plus, we're going to dive into how this elevates Notre Dame's defensive line in the future. But let's start with who is Rodney Dunham and why is he so special? Well, he is the 14th ranked player in the entire country, according to 24/7 Sports. He is the second ranked edge rusher. On3 has him listed as a 5-star. Other sites have him as a high 4-star. I think he's ultimately going to finish as a 5-star across the board, but he is without a doubt one of the most coveted recruits in the entire country at a premium position. Are stars everything? No. They do matter. And the more 5-stars you get, especially on the defensive line, the better you are going to be. Just look at Ohio State last year, right? They have talent all over the field. Yeah, they went out and they paid for some of it, but like Jack Sawyer, 5-star defensive lineman that they got out of high school. JT Tuimalau, 5-star defensive lineman that they got out of high school. Those two guys have terrorized Notre Dame for the past 2 seasons. They are homegrown 5-star products they were able to get in high school, not the transfer portal. And also a 5-star named Jeremiah Smith sure had his way with Notre Dame, but he was a wide receiver. This is going to be the highest ranked player to choose Notre Dame since Kyle Hamilton back in 2019, and he turned out all right, I would say, to say the least. And Brian Smith, our lockdown recruiting insider, I had him on the show earlier this week. We talked about Dunham, and he said that this is the best defensive line prospect to commit to Notre Dame in 30 years. And I don't know if you could tell, but Brian Smith is a Notre Dame fan. He's been around this program for a really long time, and I trust his opinion. He's not going to give you the fluff when it comes to these recruits. He's been very critical about Notre Dame's defensive line recruiting in the past, but he has raved about what Al Washington has done specifically with this cycle and getting the job done with Dunham. And I realize that this is extremely high praise, and I'm trying to keep myself in check here to make sure that I don't get ahead of myself, because Notre Dame does still have to hold on to this commitment. They got to get him to sign on the dotted line come December, and just because he's a 5-star does not mean that he's guaranteed to work out and be, a 2-time All-American or anything like that. There have been other 5-stars who felt like sure things that didn't turn out that way. And I don't have to remind you about Keon Keeley, a former 5-star defensive lineman who committed to Notre Dame before ultimately flipping to Alabama. And so far, Keeley's career with the Crimson Tide has been a disappointment. But for every Keon Keeley, there's a Dallas Turner, there's a Chop Robinson, there's a Nolan Smith, and more recently, Dylan Stewart at South Carolina. 5-stars who lived up to their potential and wreaked havoc on opposing offenses for years and ended up becoming first-round draft picks. That is the kind of company that Rodney Dunham could be in terms of his potential. If he turns out to be the player that most expect him to be, he could be in that elite company. What makes him so special? Well, let's start off with the size. He's got the exact size you want for an edge rusher. He's all of 6'4". He's got great length. He's listed as 227 pounds, but he has a ton of room to grow. He is actually one of the youngest players in his class age-wise, so I think he's going to grow maybe an inch or two, and he's going to certainly fill out a lot more once he gets into a college weight program. But I actually have a picture of him standing next to Marcus Freeman and Al Washington. I'm using it as the thumbnail for this YouTube episode that he posted on his social media accounts. So Marcus Freeman is 6'1", and he's towering over him, and Al Washington is 6'3", and he's got him by at least an inch, maybe an inch and a half. And like I said, I still think there's room for him to grow. So with that size, he also has elite explosiveness, bend, pursuit, and motor. He's extremely fast getting off the ball. So the offensive line is already disadvantaged because by the time the ball is snapped, it seems like Dunham is already right in their face. And then he has the skills to either blow by you with his speed and agility, or he can go right through an MF or face. Shout out to Marshawn Lynch there. So you could try to double team him, but do it at your own peril. You're just putting two poor high school offensive linemen in harm's way. I legitimately feel bad for some of the guys who have to go up against him because he just shoots out like a cannon and he can get right in your face. And sometimes he can bull rush, but I think a lot of the times he just uses his speed to get to the outside and get in the backfield. But he also has a great motor. And this really stands out to me because I think a lot of guys are, who are of his caliber, who play in high school, they're very dominant, right? Like, let's just be honest. They're going to take some plays off if it's a screen going the other way and he has no real chance or doesn't seem like he has a real chance to make a play. Some of these top prospects, they'll just kind of, jog on over there because they know they're probably going to get a sack or tackle for loss in the next play. That's not how Dunham operates. He is a menace. He's going to try to chase every ball carrier down all across the field, and he can get there, right? Like, he is just that talented, and he just has a desire to dominate on every single play. And I think that is the thing that separates a lot of these guys, especially the top prospects, who it's like, all right, great, you're dominant in high school, but what are you like in college when everyone's really good, right? It's the guys who have that really high motor, that tenacious desire and pursuit to dominate every single time they step on the football field. And I see that in Rodney Dunham. And he's not just a pass rusher either. He can stop the run. He knows how to set the edge, which is a skill that's very important at the next level. Not as much in high school. You don't have to be as disciplined setting the edge in every single play because a lot of times these guys are just head and shoulders above everyone else, but he can do that too. And he has racked it up on the stat sheet. During his sophomore and junior seasons in high school, he combined for 94 tackles, 26 tackles for loss, 12 sacks, and 36 quarterback hurries. Got these stats courtesy of Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated. Shout out to him. He's not even played his senior year yet, and he's putting up those kinds of numbers, playing in Charlotte where there's some good, high-quality competition. We're going to talk more about the Charlotte connection here in a little bit. But I think when he gets to Notre Dame, he's probably best suited to play strong side end, which is perfect because he pairs well with Ebenezer Iwatade, who just committed earlier this week, or I believe it was last weekend. Iwatade is a true Viper. So now you have Dunham at strong side end, Iwatade at Viper. Just in this class alone, the future is really bright. I think that Dunham is going to be a little bit more college ready than Iwatade, which is fine. I think both these guys are going to factor into the rotation early on in their career. I don't expect Dunham to start as a true freshman or anything like that because he's probably going to be behind Bryce Young, who I think has superstar potential. We're going to start to see some of that this year. If Bryce Young ends up being as good as I think he can be, he's probably going to be gone after the 2026 season. He's going to be a 3-and-done player because he could be a first-round pick in the NFL. But Dunham has a few things he needs to work on, which all these kids do, right? Unless it's Jeremiah Smith. I don't think he had to work on anything when he got to college. Dunham can get a little bit better with his technique and his hand placement, but that's going to come in time. Same with his strength, right? Like right now he's a little bit undersized at 227 pounds, but he still has his senior year. And then once he gets on campus, he's going to put on a lot more good weight once he gets to spend time with Lauren Landau. So I wouldn't expect him to get a ton of playing time, certainly not starting level reps early on, but hey, Bryce Young was getting like 30 snaps a year last year as a true freshman. We'll see what happens, right? We'll see how the rest of the defensive line rotation shakes out. But I was trying to think of a good comparison for Rodney Dunham. And, the one I came up with was Justin Tuck. And that seems crazy, but I think when you look at his build, they're the same height. Obviously, Tuck was bigger later on in his career than Dunham is right now, considering he's still in high school. But he's not a Viper like Isaiah Foskey. He's not as big as Stephon Tuitt. But in terms of his size and his style of play, he reminds me of Justin Tuck Notre Dame's former career sacks leader before Isaiah Foskey broke that record, and one of the best defensive linemen to ever play for Notre Dame. So I realize this is extremely high praise. Maybe I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I'm just so excited about what Dunham could bring to Notre Dame once he finally gets to suit up in the blue and gold. But look, Notre Dame has been in the mix for guys like Dunham before, but they always seem to come up short. So how did Notre Dame win this recruitment? And what does it say about Marcus Freeman, Al Washington, and the state of the Irish on the recruiting trail? That's coming up next. Today's episode is presented by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you will get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet on your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. So, if you've been listening to the show, you know that I gave out Houston money line over Duke. That did hit a few weeks ago, but I did pick them in all of my brackets to win it all, and they came up just short against Florida. So now we're shifting over to the NBA playoffs. And who am I taking? The Cleveland Cavaliers, baby, to win the NBA Finals. Right now, they're plus 500 on FanDuel right now. Am I a little bit biased? Yes. Am I currently wearing a Cleveland Cavaliers t-shirt? Yes. But you know what? I'm riding with the Cavs. If you bet $100 on the Cavs right now to win the NBA Finals, and they do, you'll get $500 back. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. When you look at the big picture of a commitment like this, it means a lot more than just getting one single guy to come on your team, join your class, all that stuff. Although it's very important because I just laid out why I think Rodney Dunham is such a special prospect. But Notre Dame beat out Georgia. They beat out South Carolina. They beat out Tennessee. And they even beat out Duke for Dunham. And I do think the Duke thing is funny. The fact that Duke was even in the mix here shows how much he values his education, which makes him a perfect fit for a place like Notre Dame. But it also indicates that he considered staying close to home. He's from Charlotte. South Carolina is close by. Duke is close by. Georgia, Tennessee, not quite as close, but still in the same general region. Notre Dame, meanwhile, is a lot further away. So it indicates that Notre Dame was able to convince him to take a leap of faith, go further from home and choose hard, as Marcus Freeman always likes to say. And at one point, Dunham actually received a crystal ball pick to pick the nearby South Carolina Gamecocks. And South Carolina, one thing they do right at that program is they have developed some absolute freaks on the defensive line. They recruit them out of high school, and they might be building something special over there, as much as I hate to say it, because I'm just really not a fan of Beamer. But that is neither here nor there. Dylan Stewart right now, he's a freak of nature on their defensive line, and they've had some really good pass rushers come through the program, like Jadeveon Clowney a few years ago. Remember when he was coming out of high school? It was like, is it even fair for him to play on a field with high schoolers, let alone college players, once he got to that level? And there was certainly a period of time where he was head and shoulders above everyone. Like, I'm sure you've seen that highlight of him blowing up that dude in the backfield. So they have been able to bring in a lot of really good D-line talent. It looked like they had some serious momentum with Rodney Dunham, but ultimately he picked the Irish. And why did he pick the Irish? Well, the key here is relationships. Marcus Freeman is obviously integral in that. But Al Washington really came through in a way that he just hadn't done in the past, at least not at Notre Dame. So really happy for him and happy for Marcus Freeman because he has stressed the importance of relationships when it comes to recruiting and really every aspect of building his program ever since he became the head coach of Notre Dame. And he made it clear that he was going to go after the top guys from the very beginning, but up to this point, it hasn't really worked out well for him in terms of landing those elite 5-star prospects. We've talked about it a lot on this show. Like, recruiting has certainly improved under Marcus Freeman in a variety of ways. That's the reason why they were able to make it to the national championship in his third year. It's not just the high school recruiting. It's getting guys in the transfer portal, all that, getting really talented players to commit to Notre Dame. But there was a theory, and I certainly believe that it was possible, that once Marcus Freeman became the head coach at Notre Dame, that they were going to start bringing in a lot more 5-stars because he was just a dog on the recruiting trail. But then, NIL comes into play around the same time, and that certainly complicates things. But now Notre Dame is coming off a trip to the national championship, and all of Marcus Freeman's selling points become a lot more enticing when there's proof, there's evidence that Notre Dame can compete with the heavyweights in college football. And the program has a ton of momentum right now coming off that run in the college football playoff. And Marcus Freeman is becoming one of the faces in college football. Like, with the way that these guys are in and out in 4 years, sometimes 3 in terms of the best players, and they might even really only have 2 years of actual playing time. Like, they're obviously superstars in college football, but they come and go quickly. So the faces of college football are typically the coaches, and Urban Meyer's gone. Nick Saban is gone. Jim Harbaugh is gone. So, like, who are the faces of college football right now? Kirby Smart is certainly one of them, Ryan Day. And I think Marcus Freeman is now in the mix as well because he's very charismatic. He seems like a genuinely great dude. And also, he just led his team to a national championship, and he's really cool. He's great with the media. So there's a lot of things going for Notre Dame right now, and it starts with Marcus Freeman, and I believe that Notre Dame's run to the playoff is a big reason why Notre Dame is able to get a guy like Dunham, because there's proof, there's evidence, and the pitch from Marcus Freeman is a lot easier to make when you have that concrete evidence. But also, there's other factors here as well. Defensive coordinator Chris Ash, he came into the fold late, no doubt, but he's a more willing recruiter than Al Golden was, so I believe that Chris Ash helped out as well. I mean, Chris Ash used to coach under Urban Meyer, and you know that Urban Meyer had extremely high expectations for every single person on his staff, especially when it came to recruiting, because Urban Meyer might be the greatest recruiter ever. So you factor in everything, the relationships with Marcus Freeman, Al Washington working just tirelessly to get this done, Chris Ash, and the success that Notre Dame has had on the field. Like, this is the type of guy that Notre Dame has been trying to get for so long, and now they finally got him. And I think this is a statement win for Notre Dame on the recruiting trail, no matter how Dunham pans out, because he is so highly coveted today. Georgia really wanted him, but they couldn't get it done. Georgia. They've got 2 national championships in the last few years. They've got arguably the best coach in college football, and they pump out first-rounders, especially on the defensive line, like it's their job. I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles basically won the Super Bowl because of Saquon Barkley and then a bunch of Georgia dudes on defense. So the fact that Georgia just lost out on a top defensive line prospect from, the coast, the southeast, certainly not far from SEC country, to Notre Dame, is the kind of thing that reverberates across college football. Opposing coaches are going to take notice of that, and they're going to realize that they have to take Notre Dame more seriously, even with players that are close to their region. And other recruits are going to notice that as well. They are hyper aware of where everyone is ranked, especially at their position, and who offers who, and when they offer these different prospects when. So they are going to see a player like Rodney Dunham pick Notre Dame, and they might start to take Notre Dame a little bit more seriously. And am I suggesting that Notre Dame is going to start to land a bunch more guys just because they got Dunham? No. But it's the little things, and I think it just provides a little bit more credibility to what Marcus Freeman is building, and these other high school recruits are going to see, like a player like Elijah Golden, who is certainly being pursued by all the top programs in the country. He's an interior defensive lineman. He sees that, hey, Notre Dame's got Ebenezer Iwatade. Now they got Rodney Dunham. Like, you join that defensive line, that could be a force to be reckoned with. So it's that kind of stuff. It's just like little things that you can put into the kids' ears, and now all of a sudden they're looking at Notre Dame in a different light every single time, in a better light every single time. So I think all of these things matter, the relationships and the impact of Dunham's commitment, the impact it's going to have for the program from a credibility standpoint, from a reputational standpoint with other recruits. It's all really important. But the person I am most happy for, outside of Rodney Dunham, obviously, because this is a great moment for him in his life, I'm just so happy for Al Washington, because it just had not been really going well for him on the recruiting trail as of late. But this class is shaping up to be really, really good on the defensive line. And I'm not going to try to pretend like I haven't been very critical of Al Washington in the past for his recruiting efforts, because I think he's done a really good job as a developer of talent, because Notre Dame had a really good defensive line, despite the fact that, they lost Riley Mills in the playoff. Howard Cross is playing hurt all year, and they lost Boubacar Traore and Jordan Botelho last season, 2 of their best edge rushers, and they still had a defensive line that was capable of making the national championship. Like, you have to give credit to Al Washington for getting that done, but you can also be critical about their misses on the recruiting trail. But I also have to acknowledge that he has a very difficult task, because typically the best defensive linemen are located in the South, and that's a position that really prioritizes NIL more than most. So Washington had to go into a region where guys historically don't want to leave, and he also doesn't have the NIL backing, or at least did not have the NIL backing to do it, based on Notre Dame's previous strategy, where they just limited the money that they would offer to high school recruits because they would save it to retain players and get guys in the portal, which they still do to some extent. But I think that they have significantly more momentum and trust to give NIL to high school recruits. And I'm not going to pretend like that probably didn't factor in to Rodney Dunham's decision to commit to Notre Dame, but they missed out on some big time guys. Like they should have gotten Justin Scott because he wasn't from the South. He's from Chicago. They didn't do it. I think that was mainly because of NIL, but Al Washington was not able to get it done. Last year, they had momentum with Damian Shanklin out of Indianapolis, a really talented edge rusher. He ended up at LSU. They were in the mix for Elijah Rushing a couple years ago. He was a 5-star defensive end. He ended up at Oregon. So they've been close with a bunch of these top defensive line prospects since Al Washington took over after Marcus Freeman was hired. And now they got the headliner in Rodney Dunham, the player that they have been pursuing for years, the type of prospect that they have wanted for so long. They got him with another talented prospect like Ebenezer Iwatade in the fold and potentially more on the way. Both Rodney Dunham and Ebenezer Iwatade are the latest talents from North Carolina to pick Notre Dame, but if you've been paying attention, you've noticed that this is becoming a real trend. The Irish are building a pipeline to the Carolinas, and Dunham could be the next defensive cornerstone that takes this unit to the next level. More on that right after this. Okay, now I want to dive a little bit deeper into the impact this has on Notre Dame's class of 2026 because he is now the 9th ranked commitment in this class. They're still like on the fringe of the top 10, but there's something very specific here that I want to talk about because his commitment is massive in its own right. But when you zoom out here, you start to see a bigger pattern emerging. Notre Dame is building a real recruiting pipeline to North Carolina, and it's starting to pay some serious dividends because this isn't a one-off. It's part of a growing strategy that is producing high-end results, but especially on defense. Over the last few cycles, Notre Dame has been landing more and more talent out of North Carolina, and Rodney Dunham has the chance to be the best of the bunch. Here are a few examples. Okay, so let's look at last year's class. Jadon Blair, one of the top recruits in the entire class. He's from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, top 150 player, physical freak that could play very early on. Let's go back to 2024. Notre Dame had 3 commitments from North Carolina. They had Bryce Young and Micah Gilbert out of the same high school. And Bryce Young was the top-rated commit in the class, borderline 5-star at the end. Micah Gilbert, really talented young wide receiver who I expected to make a big impact on the team this year. He suffered a broken hand injury during spring practice, but still, I think he's got a ton of potential. So those are 3 really highly rated recruits. They also got Jack Larson in that class, a 4-star tight end out of Charlotte. And then in 2023, they got Sullivan Absher, who is probably like the 6th guy on the offensive line right now, really competing for some playing time. But those are all big-time players. But it's really coming together in this class of 2026. Thomas Davis Jr., the 4-star linebacker whose dad played at Georgia, is also from North Carolina, and he's like the ringleader of this class. He's doing all the recruiting out there. He's trying to get more guys, and this is perfect because a lot of the guys that Notre Dame is looking at are already in his home state of North Carolina. And then you got Ebenezer Iwatade's teammate, who is 4-star offensive lineman Ekene Ogboko. He's also considering going to Notre Dame. And 4-star safety Nick Reddish is a top priority for Marcus Freeman and the staff. So they've already got 3, and they could potentially have 2 more in this class alone from North Carolina, which is not, historically been a pipeline to Notre Dame. When you think of like the best high school football in the country and where it's played, what do you think of first? Like, okay, Texas, Ohio, Florida, California, you can throw Pennsylvania in there as well. Well, now you got to consider North Carolina in there as well because there's great high school football all around the country. But in terms of states that are producing high-end guys year after year after year, North Carolina is starting to do that. Look at the NFL draft from this past year. A lot of guys from North Carolina. Brian Smith pointed out to me earlier this week, he is so high in North Carolina as a high school football state. He said that they are the 5th best state in the country right now at producing high school football players. So the fact that Notre Dame has made this a priority and it's working is critical because there's going to be more high school players from North Carolina. And sure, the SEC, they're going to want to have a taste as well. They're recruiting these guys the same way. But if Notre Dame is able to get these guys to commit and then they end up having success at Notre Dame, like that is huge. And as we know, Notre Dame is a national program. They don't really have a great home base in Indiana that's like chock full of high school football talent, more of a basketball state, which is fine. When they do get some really good players, Notre Dame has to land them. Guys like Jalen Smith a few years ago come to mind where like he's this 5-star elite prospect out of Indiana. Notre Dame was able to keep him in state. So now they're developing this new regional pipeline in North Carolina, which is certainly far away from South Bend, don't get me wrong, but I think when you look at the different factors, like it might be a perfect place to recruit people to Notre Dame, because I think that there's something about that area that guys are serious about their football, their academics, and their development, and that aligns perfectly with what Notre Dame has to offer. And as you continue to stack elite commitments like Dunham and like Iwatade and like Thomas Davis Jr., it creates a gravitational pull for those other regional prospects. So that is something to consider here, especially as Notre Dame continues to build out their class. This is not like last year where they had felt like 20 commitments at this point already. They're still building, but I think that they're going to continue to pursue the top talent in North Carolina. But now I want to shift gears here to the future of what Notre Dame's defense is going to look like and how Dunham fits into the scheme and fits into the future plans for Notre Dame. Well, I already mentioned that you pair him up with Ebenezer Iwatade, and that is a great combo on the edges. But Dunham has the athleticism to play as a stand-up edge rusher, but he also has the size and length to slide down in different fronts too. And I think this gives Chris Ash the freedom to move guys around, mix coverages up, and disguise everything, because that is what Al Golden was so good at, right? He would be able to confuse opposing quarterbacks and disguise everything. Well, when you have a guy who's as versatile as Dunham, that certainly helps him out. And I think that they're trying to build their defense with more guys like this that are just freak athletes, right? That can play anywhere all over the field. Like Thomas Davis Jr., I think, is a guy who could play all three of those linebacker positions. And you can tell that this is what they are looking for in this class. And Ash is probably not going to live and die by the blitz that Al Golden did, but if he wants to do that, I mean, Dunham is a guy who can line up anywhere. He can also win his one-on-one battles, and he can force quarterbacks off their spot. So I think he could play early, but now you're just continuing to raise the standard in that defensive line room, because let's be honest, when a five-star walks in, everyone else is going to take notice in the room. But that's how you build a relentless, high-motor identity up front, and I think you're starting to see that. I think you're going to see a lot more guys commit to Notre Dame. I think if Notre Dame is able to land Elijah Golden and shore up some of those depth issues on the interior, this could be one of the best defensive line classes at Notre Dame in a long, long time. But it starts with Rodney Dunham. This was the headliner. They had to get him to commit. They were right there in the mix from the very beginning, and it felt like even though when he was getting a crystal ball to go to South Carolina, Notre Dame just needed to get him on campus. He came by a couple weeks ago, and right after that visit, all the momentum seemed to be trending towards Notre Dame, and now it's official. He is committed to Notre Dame, and I really think the sky is the limit for this kid. I think he's going to be a multi-year starter. It would not surprise me if he's getting close to 10 sacks in a season by year 2 or year 3. And if everything works out, if everything goes according to plan, this dude's going to be playing on Sundays and maybe could be a first-round draft pick. And Notre Dame hasn't had a first-round draft pick on the defensive line in a long time. But this is a huge, huge commit for Notre Dame. I'm not guaranteeing you he's going to work out, but I think he has a ton of potential, and I think that he has the right mindset to maximize it once he gets on campus at Notre Dame. But that's going to do it for me today. Thank you again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day, even if you had to wait until the afternoon to make it your first listen of the day, because I wanted to react live right after he announced his decision. And this is your last call for mailbag questions, because I'm going to be right back here tomorrow morning in 12 hours or so, maybe a little bit more than that. So send those in now if you want to be featured on Friday's episode. Remember, you can drop them below in the YouTube comments, send them in on X at Locked On Irish, or on Instagram at Locked On Irish Pod. Also, before you go, please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We are getting close to 10K on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't subscribed yet, smash that subscribe button and give this video a like. Or if you listen to the podcast, rate the show 5 stars and leave a review. Really goes a long way in supporting the show, and I really appreciate everyone who's tuned in today. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you on Friday.